Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining this masterclass on leading yourself first. As you're probably aware, leadership is a topic that I'm very passionate about. And as we'll talk about, it's the reason why there's always the problem and it's always the solution. And I'm really thankful that you are sitting in on today's masterclass. I know you're going to get a ton of value on it and from sitting in it. And so thank you again. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Matt Schneider. I am the executive vice president of a global software company called FitPro Tracker. I'm also the co-founder of the Project, which is a men's development program, as well as Esquire, which is a teen father-son development program. I'm also the president and CEO of Ignition Year Coaching, as well as the Accelerate program, which this is under that umbrella as well. So prior to my entrepreneurialism and business background, I came from SWAT and special operations, where I spent 7 years total between SWAT and the U.S. Marshal's Office fugitive team. And so I really bring kind of a unique perspective and approach to leadership and to business development and success as a whole by blending business and special operations together. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about comes from those backgrounds. And so I hope that you take a lot from it. Now, I've got my notes up here. So if you see me looking up, that's what I'm doing. I want to make sure I hit on all the main points for you. We're going to be talking about how in leadership, it is always the problem and it is always the solution. We're going to talk about how it is an absolute must that in leadership, you have to figure out how to effectively lead yourself first before you can learn how to effectively lead others. Now, I do emphasize effectively because leading other people can be done ineffectively as well as effectively. So obviously we want to be effectively leading ourselves, and we want to learn because just because you're able to effectively lead yourself doesn't mean you're inherently able to effectively lead other people. You want to have to learn how to effectively lead yourself, and then you can lead other people effectively. We're going to be focusing specifically today on just this topic of leading yourself first. Leading other people is a different masterclass altogether. So with that being said, one of the primary things as you watch this video and as you take a look internally and really consider how you are leading yourself in important areas of your life, some important areas that I'm always hypersensitive to in my life, and something that I really highlight in my coaching clients and my teams that I lead as well, are the areas of their health, their wealth, and their relationships. Generally speaking, the majority of our life and the majority of the important things in our life and the important people in our life can fall in one of those three categories: our health, our wealth, and relationships. So as we talk about leadership, we talk about you as a leader and how well you're leading yourself. It's important that you don't have any ego. We can't have any ego part of the equation, because when ego gets in the way, bad things tend to happen. And so I want to make sure that I just call that out right at the beginning, that if you're known to have an ego, you've been told you have an ego, you suspect you have an ego, and that could get in the way, I'm going to ask that you put it aside and you realize that that is not your friend when it comes to leadership. All right. So we talked about how you must be able to lead yourself before you can lead other people. And the reason why I'm so passionate about leadership is because it truly is the mechanism of being able to do more of what you love and for other people to do more of what they love more of the time. And that's really the goal, right? Is figuring out how to do more things we love with more people we love more of the time. And if we could figure out how to do that, man, our days and our weeks and our month and our life in general would just be so much better if we could figure out how to do that. And leadership is a massive part of that. So we're going to talk about how leadership will give you more time with who you love and doing what you love more, and how if you get better at it, it'll give you more and more percentage doing those things. It's also one of the ways, leadership is one of the ways of having more profound impact on the world. The more leaders we have in the world, the better off we are, right? And so one of the ways that you as a leader, once you figure out how to lead yourself, can lead other people is going to be to help create other leaders. And in doing so, you're going to have more and more profound impact in the world. And so that really is just emphasizes how important it is to learn how to lead yourself first, so you can have that profound impact as you go. Now, leadership is nothing new. It's been known and understood to be an important component and a critical component of getting things done and getting a team formulated and the team bought into your vision, and nobody can accomplish anything of greatness by themselves, and it takes and requires a team to be able to do that. And it's leadership that is necessary, and a critical component, a non-negotiable component of having a team. Now, Sun Tzu, 500 BC, once said that when troops are strong and leaders are weak, the army is insubordinate. When the troops are strong and the leaders are weak, the army is insubordinate. And that's really important because it emphasizes the fact that you can have a really strong team, but if it's led by a weak leader, that strong team isn't able to perform at their best. And in fact, they become insubordinate. And that's why we say leadership is always a problem and it's always the solution. Now, leadership is not a title. It's not a rank. It's not a position. It is several things, but it's not one of those, right? And there's different kinds of authority out there. There's positional authority, and then there's moral authority. If you read John Maxwell's book on not entrepreneurial leadership, but oh gosh, dang it, what is it? Leadership. I had to look at my bookshelf. If you've read John Maxwell's book on leadership, you know that he talks about the difference between positional authority and moral authority. And we're going to talk about both of those things. Now, hopefully you have a pen and paper with you and you're able to take some notes, because I want you to jot these things down. And as you do, I want you to kind of initially consider how you may be doing in these particular areas, because within leadership, it requires lots of different kinds of abilities. And so I'm gonna list off some of the most important ones. And I want you to write these things down. I'm going to give you a list of action items and to-dos on the end of this. And so you're going to be able to reflect back on it. But initially, I want you to just kind of think about how you might be doing in these particular areas. And the first is your ability to influence. Leadership is really your ability to influence other people to do the things that you want them to do, right? To take action in the areas that you as a leader deem to be important. So your ability to influence is a major component of effective leadership. It's also your ability to make decisions. Now, leaders make decisions for other people. That's just part of the process. It's people shy away oftentimes from leadership positions because they don't feel comfortable leading or making decisions for other people. It's challenging enough for them to make decisions for themselves. And so they shy away from those leadership positions. But when we talk about you leading yourself, how well do you make decisions for yourself? How well do you take decisive action and not hesitate? We say that in special operations, that hesitation leads to devastation. You've got to recognize that you have some options. We're always given options, right? We're never completely void of options. We always have options to make now, or choices to make. Now, that doesn't mean that necessarily they're the best choices. Sometimes they're really crappy choices to choose from, but we always have choices. And so an effective leader knows how to make decisions quickly, and they don't suffer from paralysis through analysis. As they learn to lead other people, they know that they have to make effective decisions for other people. And the more people they lead, the more important and profound those decisions are because of the consequences of making the wrong decision. Now, another ability that an effective leader has is the ability to communicate. They have to be able to effectively communicate their vision, their goals, their mission, and the objective to the team. But first, you have to know what those things are for yourself. We're going to talk about core values here in a moment, and your ability to establish those core values. And then as you establish them, living by them, and not just communicating them verbally, but communicating with your feet. Communication too often is considered to be something that is just spoken. When leaders don't speak as much as they act, right? And I always care much more about how people act and how they talk with their feet than I ever do what they say, because as we know, talk is cheap, but you can't argue with outcomes and you cannot argue with results. And that is a direct correlation between your actions. And so effective leaders know how to communicate, not just verbally, but through their actions. And that's very important. Effective leaders know how to improve people's circumstances. They know how to improve the circumstances for themselves, and they know how to improve them for other people. And again, you're thinking about this through the lens of how you can effectively lead yourself. So how, as a leader of yourself, can you improve your circumstances to make it so that you are continually progressing? So that way, 1 week from now, 1 month from now, 1 year from now, you are better off then than you are today. That's always a metric of how we're doing this life, because as we know, when it comes to arriving, we never arrive, right? We're always in a constant pursuit of betterment and progression, and to do better in our health, do better in our wealth, do better in our relationships, and the other key areas of our life. So effective leaders know how to improve circumstances. Effective leaders also know the difference and importance of responding versus reacting. They know that in a reaction, that's generally done because of emotion, and that emotion is something that oftentimes can be a liar, right? We can be emotional based on a whole variety of things, and people who react are doing so largely out of emotion. They're not really thinking through their response. They're not really hearing the person that's talking. They're not really evaluating the whole dynamic and the totality of the circumstances, versus an effective leader who responds. And that is the opposite of just a reaction. They're actually absorbing the information. They're hearing the other people. They're talking to the stakeholders. They're really having an internal dialogue as a result relates to, am I emotional right now? Am I, one of four things that can sometimes lead to making bad decisions, which is referred to as HALT. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? If you're making decisions when you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, chances are you're going to be in reaction mode versus response mode. So effective leaders know how to respond versus react. They also know when they're more likely to react, and they pay attention to how they're feeling, so that way they ensure that the responses continue to be that instead of a reaction. Effective leaders know how to create other leaders. Again, one of the most profound ways you can have impact on this world and many generations is by creating more leaders. And really, one of the metrics that I use to judge leadership and judge whether or not somebody is an effective leader is whether or not they're able to create other leaders. And the ultimate outcome is that that leader creates not just one leader, but the leader that they created is able to create another leader. If that person that they trained and mentored and coached and invested in becomes a leader themselves, and they are able to take all of that experience, all that coaching and mentoring, and create other leaders, well, now we're getting to a place to where that profound impact and the generational impact really starts to set in, and that's really, really important. One of the last items that's critical for effective leadership is discipline. Discipline is that bridge between what you have and what you want. And so it's important that you understand the significance of being disciplined and not allowing yourself to go down the path that deviates from your goals, that deviates from your objectives, that deviates from your vision, and realize that discipline in your health, discipline in your wealth, discipline in your relationships are the things that are going to continue to allow you to progress. Now, I want you to be thinking about those things and really spend some time evaluating your performance in those areas. But then I also want you to, and I'm going to tell you how to do this throughout this course, but I want you to think about how you're going to get feedback and who you're going to get feedback from on those areas, because that's really important. Oftentimes there's a very kind of significant deviation or gap between who we think we are as a leader and how we're leading ourselves and eventually other people versus how other people see us, right? So we want to be able to get feedback from others that we trust and that we value their opinion, and we know that they're going to give us honest and raw feedback for our benefit, and know that with that feedback, they're saying it out of love and to help us get better and not to hurt us. And anytime we get feedback from people that we know are genuinely trying to help us and they're not trying to hurt us, then there's no reason to get annoyed or frustrated or angry or any other negative emotion that would come from hearing something that was hard to hear, right? So we want to make sure that we are getting that feedback. And again, I'm going to show you, or tell you rather, how to make that happen. Now, As we start to break it down, and keep in mind that this is only an hour long. And so I'm not going to have the ability to get deep into the weeds on any real one particular topic. And being an effective leader is it's very deeply rooted in many different key components that when you start peeling back the onion and deep diving into the various areas, there's a lot to it, and we simply cannot get to it in an hour. So I just want to lay the foundation for that first and foremost, and make sure that you know that this is high level stuff. We're not getting into the weeds and all these things. But there's two areas that effective leaders must have to start. And I want to challenge you to see if you have these things, and if not, to get them. The first is to have a very clear vision, a very clear vision of 3 years in advance. Where do you want to be 3 years from now? What do you want your circumstances to look like? And not just in general, but to have a vivid vision, right? So a vivid vision is what exactly is the amount of money going to be in your account when you are 3 years ahead? How many countries would you have visited in 3 years ahead? How much money would you have donated 3 years from now? A vivid vision is an exact number, an exact circumstance that's outlined, and you have clarity around that. It's not just generally speaking. It's just not 3 years from now, I want to be better off financially. 3 years from now, I want my marriage to be, better, and for my wife and I, or for my spouse and I, to be closer. It's not general. So effective leaders, they have clarity around their 3-year vision. They also have a 1-year goal. They also know 1 year from now, what are the goals that they're going to hit, so that way they're able to achieve their 3-year vision. Now, we'll get into the vision a little bit more, but I will say that you never arrive at that vision, because as you grow and as you develop, that 3-year vision continues to adapt, right? And it continues to evolve and grow with your growth. And so different than the 1-year goal, you will hit your 1-year goals. That is a must for effective leaders, but that 3-year vision continues to get bigger and grander as you hit those goals, as you continue to grow. Because remember, we never arrive. But an effective leader has a 1-year goal, and they will break that down into quarterly goals, and then monthly goals, and then weekly goals. And it's all very structured, so that way when 1 year comes around, they have this process and this path that they followed in order to hit that 1-year goal. So effective leaders have a 3-year vivid vision. They have a 1-year goal. They also have core values. So one of the things that I oftentimes see missing in people's lives and people's companies, as they try to lead themselves and then eventually they try to lead other people, are core values. Now, core values are they're your North Star. They're the elements that describe to you and to the world what you're about and what you accept versus what you won't accept. It's the way that you determine who you're going to allow in your circle and the kind of proximity you're going to have to certain people, and what core values they must have in order for you to relate with them and do business with them and spend time with them. And obviously, when in business, it's a way of saying who's going to be on your team and who's going to be the companies that you associate with and do business with, and making sure that you have the right people on your team. So core values, both personally and professionally, ensure that you have the right people on your team. The next thing is that core values, they help you set standards of expectations for yourself and for others. So Ed Milet describes it as a thermostat, right? And we should always be increasing and elevating our thermostat personally, and then also demanding that other people rise up with us. We never want to cool ourselves off and go down and digress into the person that we once were in order to accommodate other people. And core values allow for us to say, this is our standards of expectations, and you either come up and join the team and join the ranks, and you can play in the same sandbox that I'm in, or we're not. We're going to create distance from each other because I have a high standards of expectations, and part of that is demanding that other people do as well. So the question I have for you is, do you have core values? And if the answer is no, then you need to set some. Mine are being emotionally disciplined. It is to be resilient, to be resourceful. It's to be a problem solver. It's to have integrity in everything. And it's to always exercise extreme ownership. Those are the core values that I have and that I operate by. I want to encourage you to set your own core values for you personally and for everybody else that you're going to allow to stay in close proximity to you. But here's the other side to this coin is once you establish your core values, you need to live by them. You need to be able to rattle them off at any given time and make sure that other people know what they are as well. And it's not going to do you any service. It's not going to help your circumstances at all as somebody who's trying to lead themselves if you have quote unquote core values that you've written down, but there's a deviation of how you live your life. So I want to challenge you to really think through some core values, and feel free to borrow mine or, borrow anybody's, and really just think through what it is that you want to be about. Where do you want to set your North Star? Where is your true north? And have core values associated with it. And then you got to live by them. So, excuse me, that's going to be number one, is core values. Now, going back to vision, I didn't always have a vision. In fact, probably about 5 years ago, I was without any kind of vision, and I was really without any kind of core values. I was a young entrepreneur. I owned a company called Forward Movement Training, and I bought off on this whole thought process of work hard, play hard, right? And so I would work my ass off all week long, and I would be spending all kinds of time at the office, and I was missing all kinds of experiences and opportunities with my wife and with my son. And I would tell myself I was working hard. Little did I know at that time that there's a difference between busy and productive. And I was very busy, but I wasn't being very productive. But I was working hard. And then on the weekends, I would tell myself, oh, I worked so hard all week long, even though I wasn't really producing outcomes, even though I wasn't really operating off of any real core values, even though I didn't have any real vision or goals that I was really pursuing. It was general, right? I was really more or less living on a day-to-day basis. Like today, I wanted to have X amount of sales. Today, this is what a win would look like. But there was no strategy behind it. And as a result, when the weekend would come around, I would lose any momentum that I had. Any momentum that I had gained from being busy, even though I wasn't very productive per se, because I wasn't operating off of goals and with a vision, and I didn't have core values, I would lose all that momentum. And then I would have to start all over again on Monday. And it was so frustrating. I remember that, there was such a long period of time for almost 2 years where I was just living behind this mask, and I was pretending to be happy. I was pretending to be successful. I was pretending to be, generating money and that everything was going the right way. Outwardly, if you were to talk to me, this was back in 2015, 2016, you would have really thought that things were going great. Little did very many people know the actuals was that I was white knuckling it. I was unhappy. I was a fraud. By the time I did get home, whatever time that was, my wife and son were getting the scraps of my energy, of my personality, of my sense of humor. They were getting the scraps of it. And instead, they were getting a lot of passive aggressiveness. And it took a lot of energy trying to take this fake it till you make it approach. And it wasn't until 2016, I think it was, when I found my first mentor and my first coach. And they were the ones that started investing time and energy into me. And I started to pay them to do it. But they told me about core values, and they told me about a vision and goals. And it was when I started setting all that stuff up that everything began to change. I then started to be able to decide for myself what a long-term win looked like, what a one-year goal win looked like, and where I wanted to be in 3 years. And I started setting a higher standard of expectations for myself and for the other people that are around me. What that required was that it forced me to push some people out of my circles, and the people that were not helping me stay on track, I had to create distance from. The people that were wanting to party on the weekends and contribute to the loss of momentum over the weekend, only to have to start back up on Monday, I couldn't allow for anymore. And some of them came up, some of them rose up with me, and they understood that what I was doing was healthy and something they wanted to achieve as well. And I brought those people closer into my circle. But others I had to push out because they weren't they weren't healthy for what I was wanting to do. So that ever since that happened, everything began to change. And so there was a tremendous amount of benefit to having a clear vision with clear goals and core values. So set those core values. Now, in addition to those things, some other components and characteristics that you want to have as an effective leader for yourself are going to be a discipline. As we talked about, it's the bridge between what you have and what you want. And you need to be able to be disciplined in your diet, in your exercise, in your relationships, in your money and your finances. There needs to be discipline in the really important areas of your life, or else you're going to find yourself being busy and not productive. You're going to find yourself having goals that you're not achieving. And it's oftentimes discipline that's missing in people's lives when there's this gap between what they want and what they have. And there's this frustration that settles in for far too many people when they continue to go month after month and year after year of being in the same place and not having the kind of progress that they desire. It's oftentimes discipline that is missing, and discipline is a major part of leadership. So again, leadership is always the problem and it's always the solution, and effective leaders are disciplined. They're also very careful about who they allow in their circle, who they allow to be in close proximity to. They know, effective leaders know that they have to edit and sometimes delete relationships altogether when they're not conducive to the goals that they've set. So one of the things that I want you to write down is the first names, the first relationships that you can think of that come to the top of your head that are unhealthy for you. They're toxic in some way, they're dramatic in some way. And keep in mind, these relationships aren't just with people. They could be with other things like food, with shoes, with pornography. It could be a relationship with other things where it's not conducive to your core values. It's not in alignment with your core values. It's not facilitating the growth that you want. And I want you to write down the people and the circumstances that need to be addressed in those relationships, excuse me, that need to be dealt with, right? And I want you to address the proximity that you have to things that need to be pushed away. I also want you to be thinking about whether or not you have people in your life and people in your circles that you can get closer in proximity to. It's very important. Proximity is very powerful, but both for the benefit and the demise of people. Being in close proximity of other people who are where you want to be. They were once where you are, and they're now where you want to be. And close proximity to mentors, close proximity to coaches, close proximity to other people that have healthy relationships, healthy, finances, they're healthy physically and mentally. Being in close proximity to those people is massively powerful. And it's a way that that accountability happens. It's a way that progress happens. And so I want you to write things down, both, people relationships and then other relationships that need to be addressed. You don't have to come up with solutions right now. You just want to notate them. And then of course, you're going to come back to this later on and you're going to think through it more, because chances are you probably have too close a proximity to things that are not helping you than you should, and they need to be dealt with, and they may need to be edited or deleted altogether. And I do get it. Some relationships are very challenging to edit or even delete, especially if we're talking about family. But there's lots of people who have relationships with even their family where it is just problematic. And there's this guilt associated with creating distance and editing these relationships or even deleting these relationships, so they continue to allow themselves to stay in it. And if that's the case for you, well, then we don't need to spend too much time going down the path of realizing that it's got to happen if you want to pursue growth and pursue progress. You've got to deal with those relationships. If you just continue to stay where you're at, you're going to continue to get what you've already been given and what you continue to be given because of those relationships. So that is that. Effective leaders are also resilient. So there's no way to progress without failure. And too many people shy away from attempting things out of fear of failure. But just know this: failure is part of the process. I want you to set, when you're going through and you're thinking about your 3-year vision and your 1-year goals, I want you to set big audacious goals and not shy away from setting big audacious goals because of the fact that you're afraid of failure. Failure is part of the process. Now, effective leaders, people who are effectively leading themselves first, they're resilient. And what that means is, even when they fail, they realize it's part of the process. They get back up, they dust themselves off, they get back on the field, and they run a different play. And they keep doing that process until they get the ball across the finish line. Resiliency is such an important thing. There's so many people who will attempt something and then they will quit as soon as it gets hard, or the first instance where there's some failure, they'll throw in the towel and they'll say, well, at least I tried. That's more than what other people would do. And they kind of give themselves a free pass to deviate from the original goals they set. So I want to challenge you to be resilient and not to walk away from something that you have deemed to be important, all because of a temporary failure. Right? On the SWAT team, for example, when we would go and approach a structure, we would have a main entry point that we would designate. Right? This would be the door, the approach that we would take. But just in case that when we got there, it was fortified, we couldn't get in, or we were compromised on the approach, or something would happen, we would have 2 or 3 different areas that we would then immediately deviate to. They were already pre-identified. And so we would just automatically shift to that secondary breach point, or tertiary breach point. And so while we may get to the door and hit the door and hit the door and hit the door and come up empty-handed from the standpoint of a successful breach, we wouldn't just stop and pack up and leave. We would just move to a different breach point. So our objective of getting in, our objective of dealing with the problem inside the structure would remain the same, but how we ended up doing it, how we ended up getting in there and getting the ball across the finish line and reaching our ultimate objective, that may change along the way. So be resilient. The next piece is to take ownership. So one of the most important pieces of effective leadership of yourself is to take ownership. When things don't go right, because when you're leading, even when you're leading yourself, especially when you're leading other people, there will be wrong decisions made. There will be times where you will take the information that you know or the information that you suspect, and you'll make decisions off of it. Maybe you realize the importance of responding versus reacting, but you reacted to something, and that reaction made the circumstance worse. And there's an apology that needs to be given, and there's ownership that needs to be taken. Effective leaders take ownership. And so they have extreme ownership in all areas of their life. They understand that when somebody else is blamed in a circumstance, that's giving that other person or other thing, whatever's being blamed, control over your life. And you don't want to do that. You do not want to give control to any other person or any other thing by shifting blame. And that's what's happened. You say it's their fault. Well, that means that they had control. Just take ownership, own the circumstance, own the behavior, own the action, own the outcome, and then you can make whatever apology or whatever adjustments, whatever pivots that need to be made, and then go from there. Because leaders do not always make the best decisions. They do not always make the correct decisions, and owning that is critically important. And it also gains a lot of confidence in yourself and credibility with yourself when you're leading yourself. And for the other people involved, it gives a lot of confidence and credibility from their perspective as well in your leadership. So don't be afraid to take ownership and lean into that as you go along. And then, as I mentioned before, effective leaders, they seek feedback. Feedback is so important, guys, because we all have blind spots. We all have areas where we think we got stuff figured out, but we really don't. And it's a vulnerable thing to do for us to ask feedback. And it's a tough thing to do to ask feedback. And so a lot of people shy away from it, and they would rather just assume that if nobody says anything and if there was no apparent problems, that what they did was correct. While, really what could be the case is other people just don't want to say anything. They don't want to ruffle your feathers. They're afraid of how you might react or what the outcomes might be if they give some feedback. And so nothing is said. All the while, you're not being given the opportunity to learn and grow. And so with that note, if you guys have feedback on this presentation, I absolutely would love it if you guys would provide that to me. So whether that's through an email, through a chat, through a text, whatever that is, just while we're talking about feedback, I would love it if you guys would provide feedback on this presentation after the fact. Now, moving on. The areas of emphasis: health, wealth, and relationships. Now, health is your mind and body, guys. So we have one body, one mind to walk around this earth with. And if we are lucky, if we are super lucky and we really take good care of ourselves, we have, maybe 100 years on this planet, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things. And what we do during that time is so important. And so taking good care of ourselves, taking good care of our mind and body is so important. One of the three areas that I really emphasize when it comes to health that's one of the reasons why I consider it so important, is because how we look and how we come across and how we see ourselves in the mirror, and how we perform, how we sleep, it's all so important to our goals, right? So if we're going to have big audacious goals 1 year from now, and a 3-year vision that really is significant and is going to help us better the lives of other people and provide opportunities for ourselves and our families, our mental health and our physical health has to be in check. So one of the big picture goals and things I want to emphasize to you is take care of yourself, take care of your health. Effective leaders don't participate in things that are going to compromise their health, their physical or psychological health, right? And they're aware of the long-term effects of indulging on things that they shouldn't. And they're aware that there's a difference between what the body wants and what the body needs. And so we recognize that fast food and processed food are things that, companies are spending millions upon millions of dollars making these foods as addictive as possible. So we'll eat as much of it as possible so they can make as much money as possible. Those foods oftentimes are not what our body actually wants. It can't really do anything with those calories. It's not facilitating betterment internally. It's not helping our gut health. It's not helping our mind health. It's not helping our waistline. And so a lot of people know that, but they don't live by that. And they're making decisions to eat things or consume things that are not healthy for them. And that is both in food, and then also consumption of, whatever, the stuff online, or how they spend their time, their downtime on TV or whatever it is. Just be very guarded about your health, your mental and physical health. When it comes to wealth, we really, again, don't have time to get into the weeds on this, but what I will say to wealth is do not shy away from or feel bad about wanting to be unreasonably wealthy. Wealth is a vehicle to all kinds of securities and all kinds of freedoms. Wealth is the vehicle for you to be able to write a really big check to the charity that you love. It's the way to put your kids to the best schools, provide your families with the best insurances, to provide your friends and families or whoever you want with the most worldly experiences and the best experiences, where they don't have to worry about paying for it, right? And wealth is a vehicle to so many things. Now, wealth does buy happiness. It really, really does. What happiness is and how it's defined to you is going to be unique, right? It's the defining happiness is different for everybody. Perhaps if somebody had, $2 million, they would spend every bit of it on charity, right? And that would make them, over the top happy, and they would feel fulfilled, and they wouldn't have a dime to their name afterwards, but that would bring the most amount of happiness. Other people would buy, houses or boats or go on trips or whatever the case is, but don't shy away from wanting to be unreasonably healthy or unreasonably wealthy. As long as what you want to do with that wealth is something that's going to be a healthy thing, is going to help better people's lives and, provide more experiences. And so again, we could get into the weeds on it, but we're going to have to do that on another conversation. You can reach out to me if you want to get deeper into it. But I just want to say and really emphasize the fact that a lot of people have an unhealthy relationship with money, and they shouldn't. And it comes from a scarcity mindset a lot of times. And I want to change that and shift that thought process into an abundance mindset, and think that it can buy happiness in the way of charitable donations or experiences or insurances. And it provides security in the way of insulating you from all the other dynamic circumstances. As I record this masterclass right now, it's February 2022, and Ukraine is under the attack of Russia. And Russia had launched this unjustified, unprovoked attack into Ukraine, and it is getting really, really messy. The United Nations and NATO and the amount of sanctions and unity that's happening right now amongst all the other nations against Russia is unprecedented. But with those sanctions, it's going to come world impact. We are going to see impact at the price pumps and in the supply chains. And there's a lot of increases to things that we use on a daily basis and consume on a daily basis as a result of this. And that's in addition to the fact that we're seeing a dramatic increase in inflation already due to the COVID pandemic over the last couple of years. Money helps insulate you and protect you from the circumstances that you have no control over, and helps to make sure that you can continue to afford the things that you need and the things that you want, independent of what is happening around the world or in the government, right? And so money gives you that insulation. It gives you that security. People who don't have that are very vulnerable, and they really feel the pinch, and they really feel the pain of inflation, and they really feel the pain of the supply chain being compromised and the gas prices shooting through the roof. So again, I think I've hammered that point home enough, but I really just want you to have an abundance mindset and not shy away from wanting to be unreasonably wealthy, so that you can have those things. Lastly, when it comes to the 3 points of emphasis, is relationships. Now, relationships, as I've already talked about, is really important, especially when it comes to proximity to healthy relationships versus not healthy relationships. I also have a saying that relationships are our riches, right? And really want to encourage you to remember that, Zig Ziglar said it best, I think, that, when you help other people get what they want and what they need, that's a great way of you end up getting what you want and what you need. You help other people get those things that they want and need first, you will get what you want and need. And so really thinking about other people and how you can use your talents, your gifts to help other people, and investing in them, and realizing that that investment will come back. You will get a return on that investment, but be careful about who you invest your time and energy in, and really make sure that you only are doing that with people that are worthy of it, the people that are going to have high standards of expectations of themselves and others, people who are going to take that investment of your time and energy and progress as a result and better their circumstances as a result. And it's not going to be people that are going to bring you down and drain you, and they're going to compromise your momentum in life, your goals and your visions, because you're investing in the wrong relationships. Relationships are our riches as long as you're investing in the right relationships. Now, I've got several action steps for you. And so I want you to be writing these things down. And over the course of the next 7 days, I want you to really think about these things and start putting some action steps together. So as we do, or as I rattle these off, please write them down. The first question I want you to answer is, how close are you to doing what you love 100% of the time? How close are you at doing what you love 100% of the time? The next question is, what would it take to get to 100% of the time? The third question is, why aren't you there yet? Fourth question, what would it take, or what would it look like to be at 100% of the time? What would that look like for you to be at 100% of the time? When it comes to what would it take, the things I want you to answer along that vein are, is it a matter of leadership, leading yourself better? Is it a matter of mentorship that you're not being mentored? You don't have mentors in your life, and you need mentors in your life. You need coaches in your life. A lot of times they're common sense, they're just not common knowledge. And it's not until you start investing personally and professionally into yourself that that you get those light bulbs to turn on. And so sometimes it's a matter of not, the answer to these questions is you don't have mentorship and coaching in your life. Sometimes it's proximity. So, are you not where you want to be in those areas because you have too close a proximity to unhealthy relationships versus deleting or editing those and then surrounding yourself with other healthy relationships. And then trimming the fat is another way of saying getting rid of unhealthy relationships. Once you have those questions answered, I want you to answer these ones. How well are you leading yourself? How well do you feel like you're leading yourself? Are you living by your core values? If you have them, ask yourself, how well are you living by them? If you don't have core values, you need to establish them. And if you do have core values, I want you to challenge them. It's okay and it's appropriate and necessary to, on occasion, look at your core values and ask yourself, are those still the core values that represent who you are and where you want to be in life? And do these core values represent your North Star? So make sure you have those core values, you're living by them, and you're challenging them. I want you to set a 1-year vivid vision. So take the time to really think about 1 year from now, where do you want to be? And whoever is part of that vivid vision, because again, the part that makes it vivid is it's very specific. So 1 year from now, where do you want to be in your health, in your wealth, in your relationships, or any other important topic of your life? And who is going to be there? Who's part of that vivid vision? Whoever is part of it and important pieces of it, you need to have a conversation with them and include them in the development of that 1 year vivid vision, including your kids. It doesn't matter who they are, what age they are, they should be part of the conversation if they are included in the 1 year vivid vision. Do not shy away from having that conversation with them and including them in the development of that, and make sure that the kids, they have a voice in this, because then it allows you to help them understand what contributions they can make in achieving that 1 year vivid vision. And then it helps you as a community, whether that's your family, in the home, or your team at the office, or your community, whatever it is, it helps you reach that 1 year vivid vision together. So establish 1 year vivid vision by having a conversation with all the key players and making sure that they have a voice. I talked about trimming the fat, and we need to seek feedback. So once you establish the proximity piece of things, and you are editing and deleting the relationships that you should not be having because you have identified as relationships of being things that are not helpful to you and are not facilitating the kind of growth and environment for you to reach your goals, then I want you to look at the relationships that you have deemed to be relationships that are important to keep and are important to get closer to. I want you to be thinking about getting feedback from them, and I want you to approach them and ask them for honest feedback, and ask them for your blind spots and for anything that they might share with you that will help you get better and perform at a higher level. And don't be afraid to ask for that feedback. And again, as long as you're asking them for that feedback, you should not be getting upset or angry or frustrated at what you hear, because they are telling you these things to help you get better. So I want you to ask for feedback by the people that you have identified as being of your character or of your core values, that you have identified as also having high standards of expectations. And then take that feedback, really consider it, and then start putting a game plan around how to incorporate that feedback into your life so that you can continue to elevate, and then provide feedback to other people as well who are in your circle. That's part of leadership, but that starts getting into leading other people, which is going to be a different masterclass altogether. And that is the class on effectively leading yourself. Now, if you have any questions, if you want anything clarified, or you want to connect on this to take a deeper dive in any particular area, feel free to get a hold of me. My contact information is going to be somewhere around this video or somewhere on this landing page or website. And so feel free to get a hold of me. I would be happy to connect with you and talk through your individual circumstances and see how we can work together to improve them. That is all for this masterclass on leading yourself first. Thank you so much for sitting in on it. Thank you for your time and dedication to improving your circumstances, investing in yourself, and making it so that your future is better and more successful than it is currently. Thank you so much again. Until our next masterclass or conversation together, have a great rest of your day and take care. Be safe. We'll talk soon.